What's up? This is Arthur Moats, number 52 of the Buffalo Bills, and you're listening to Bills Central Podcast on Pro Football Central.
And look at it go! He could go all the way! Touchdown! Touchdown! Touchdown!
The Bills make me wanna shout.
Bills fans, are we looking for a podcast 100% dedicated to your Buffalo Bills? Then you're at the right place. Bills Central Podcast, brought to you by ProFootballCentral.com. And now your host, Chris Brown. Go Bills!
Shout it right now, baby. Come on, come on.
We are here on Bills Central Podcast. This is your host, Chris Brown, and I'm on the line with co-host, Reid. How you doing today, Del?
Well, I'm a man.
Not too much. Just wanted to talk a little bit about the recent news that just broke not too long ago. In the Buddy Nix, general manager of the Buffalo Bills, has stepped down as his role of general manager and will now be located in a special assistance role in the Buffalo Bills organization. Want to get some thoughts on that?
Yeah, what a surprise. Didn't expect that to cross my timeline right as the lunch hour began, especially since right after the draft, Russ Brandon was quoted as saying that Buddy Nix is our general manager and will be for a long time. Not quite sure what a long time is in terms of Uncle Russ's vernacular, but yeah, so that was not expected today.
Was could have been a draft smoke screen, right? Is that what they call them, draft smoke screen?
That would be the first ever post-draft smoke screen. Maybe they're trying to scare somebody for 2014.
Yeah, well, one would presume that a man by the name of Doug Whaley will be named the new GM. Today they were focusing on and saying that it was Buddy's day and they didn't want to get out there and put a name out there, but a lot of fans presume it'll be a man who's been in waiting for a little while now in Doug Whaley. What are your thoughts about Doug?
I think the writing's on the wall, absolutely, that Doug's going to be the next general manager. I mean, he just re-signed a new contract a few months ago with the team. It's always been assumed that he is being groomed for that eventual general manager position. And when you look back, Buddy Nix really was a transitional general manager to bring the team hopefully back to the level of respectability that it hasn't seen in some time. And as I mentioned on Twitter a few hours ago, that Buddy Nix got the team pointed in the right direction, and now it's just up to Doug Whaley to bring it home.
Now, when Nix took over this team a few years back, taking a look at the roster, completely overhauled roster from years back, and he's definitely, I would say, put his stamp on players that he's drafted. A lot of people questioned it a couple of years back when he took C.J. Spiller. He's turned out well. Jarvis Bird, franchise tag this past year. Hopefully they sign him to a new deal. Hopefully that's priority number one on Doug's list. Did you see this coming this soon?
No, I didn't see it coming. I mean, I did, I think, a few months ago. I think every Bills fan did. But then when, like I mentioned at the outset, when Russ Brandon put that out following the draft that he was going to be the GM for a while, kind of like lessened that expectation. So wasn't quite expecting that.
Okay.
But I do have to say, I was going to say that. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, though, I think that a lot of fans are underestimating exactly what we as fans owe to Buddy Nix. Obviously, everybody has their own opinion, and they're entitled to it. But you look at the roster where it was just 4 years ago, and what he's done. There are 90 players right now on the team, on the roster. 83 of them were not here prior to the 2010 draft. So, I mean, he has really overhauled this roster. And a lot of people never really actually assumed that the team was being rebuilt. I think either because they didn't say it or because deep down nobody wanted to really admit it. But right in front of our eyes, he rebuilt this team.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And Buddy likes to build through the draft, and that's something that I think he's done. And without a doubt, slowly, as the years gone by, there's been a little change going on. And I don't know, looking back at this past draft, if I would put a stamp on it and say it was a Buddy Nix type of draft. It would be interesting to see if it would ever come out that Whaley had his hands more in the draft than Nix did. But at the same time, it was still Nix's position within the draft rights to go after the guys that he thought would best suit this team. And maybe he left a big stamp in E.J. Manuel and for the future for the Bills.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at Whaley, who, if memory serves me right, was hired just shortly after Nix was. I don't know if it was a direct hire of Nix or whatever, but as soon as Nix was in place, if my memory serves me right, Whaley was in place shortly thereafter. Whaley was hired.
Nix actually hired Whaley, I believe, 3 months after being in the position in Buffalo.
Okay, great. So, all right, so I'm right there. So, and you look at where he was hired from, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they have a strong tradition of building through the draft, not going after the sexy free agent signing and that whole same philosophy. So I think that what we've seen over the past 3 or 4 drafts is going to continue in the same fashion. In the past 3 or 4 free agency sessions, I should say. I think it's going to continue. We're not, we're not always going to go out and sign the big, sexy Mario Williams choice. I think that was an anomaly, and I think it served us well. I think it will serve us well. I think we'll see that this year. But I think it's going to be a continuation of this whole mindset. And you see people on Twitter getting frustrated about how, it's another promotion from within. I saw some of that stuff. Really? Really? I mean, I don't know. It's like, yeah, half the people, they sing the praises of the fact that he was hired from the Steelers, and now the other half, or maybe it's even the same people, complaining about how it's a promotion from within. So Bills can't win, and it, makes sense until they're in the playoffs and they're having success. I mean, people are fair to take their shots, I suppose.
Oh yeah, I mean, I could see frustration coming from fan standpoint. The lack of success on the field, can have them drawing to conclusions relatively fast and putting in the disappointments that come in year after year. But in my eyes, I'm honestly surprised that the Steelers actually let Whaley get away from the organization, knowing of the bright mind that was coming up as the years went along. And I'm actually glad and fortunate that the Bills were able to get him and have him as an understudy to Buddy Nix and developing through the draft as the Steelers did throughout their years. Now, I think it'll serve Whaley well if, of course, he is named the new GM, that he has a whole new staff to work with. He's not sitting there trying to piece together piece by piece a coaching staff when something's already set now with Coach Marone coming in, Coach Pettin, Coach Hackett, and all of the position coaches coming in now, that it's a fresh start, and having a new quote-unquote GM in place right now serves him well in that role.
Yeah, I think it's great. It's their team now. New blood in the front office, new blood on the coaching staff, and we're going to see where it goes from there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say is priority number one? I would say it's signing Bird, in my opinion. We've waited and waited for him to sign his tender and his franchise tag, but I think he's holding out a little bit. And I haven't heard word of him being at OTAs today, and I don't think you'll see him at OTAs or minicamp. I think he'll be holding out as much as possible until training camp kicks in, and then hopefully not even leading up to the year. Hopefully they can get him signed to a big contract and get him here for a few more years. So I would say Bird would be number one on the contract, number one on the priority list. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, there's no way I could disagree with that thought. It's something that it really needs to get done, and it's something that's not unique to this team. I mean, we're not used to it because if I'm correct, Nate Clements is the only player that's ever been franchised by the Bills up to this point. I may be forgetting somebody, but it's not something that happens often with the Bills. But if you watch the league as a whole, for a franchise player to wait until the absolute last moment to sign that tender before the required attendance is in place. It's not crazy what's going on right now. It's not unique. I don't think right now at this point fans have a lot to worry about. Now that the draft is out of the way, I would assume once Whaley is named successor, which is not yet, but we're assuming he is, I think that stuff should play out in fairly short order.
Okay. Now, going into the upcoming season, Whaley mostly dealt with player personnel, and now he'll have the overhaul, possibly, of dealing with the whole general manager outlook on everything. And I think it's something that he's basically pretty much done, for the past months or year, even maybe a year back leading up to the thought of Nick's stepping down. Do you think he's ready to fulfill those shoes?
Oh, geez, yeah, absolutely. I think he's ready. And keep in mind, we're just going by titles, right? And from little snippets we hear in interviews and conjecture made by pundits, but we don't even know how much he's been doing up to this point. Who, for all we know, he's been getting, Buddy Nix has been getting him coffee for the past year or so. Actually, I seriously doubt that's the case, but we don't know the level of involvement he's had, but I don't think he's just being thrown into this whole situation willy-nilly, especially since the position he had in Pittsburgh had similar duties to what he had here in Buffalo. I think it's pretty... I'm not worried about it. I think he's going to transition just fine, if that transition hasn't even already happened over this prior offseason.
Okay. Well, I totally agree, and I think Whaley would do a heck of a job in the front office. And I think, with the new coaching staff coming in, it's a fresh new look on everything, and it's something that fans should be excited about. They got a young mind in office now. We got tremendously younger within the front office and the coaching staff, with Wilson stepping down his duties as president and naming Russ Brandon, and then also the coaching changes. So we got very, very young in a very short amount of time with the offices and the coaching staff.
Yeah, that's cool. That would make a cool Photoshop, wouldn't it? If you were to take all this, the who was in place in these roles this time last year and who's in place now, with Ralph being Russ and Chan being Doug Marrone and Buddy being Doug Whaley. That'd be a cool little collage to put together.
Oh, absolutely. Well, since the news just broke, we're actually going to have a special interview here coming up on Bill Central Podcast. Stay tuned. We got former Hall of Fame coach of the Buffalo Bills. We have Marv Levy online. He'll be joining us here on the podcast. Coming up right after the short break.
Where else would you rather be than right here, right now, tuning in to Bills Central Radio?
And we are live here on Bills Central Podcast. This is your host, Chris Brown. I'm also here with my co-host, Reid. How are you doing, Del?
I'm doing great, man. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. We got an excellent treat here for all of our fans. Of a special guest. A lot of you fans, very well known. He is a Hall of Famer, coach of the Buffalo Bills, Marv Levy. How you doing, Marv?
I'm doing fine. Good to join the both of you.
Oh, pleasure to have you. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Here to ask your assessment of the new Bills head coach, Doug Marrone, and also the direction that the Bills are heading here in the future with Buddy Nix, the general manager, just recently stepping down in the past hour. We just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Well, first of all, Doug Marrone, I don't know personally. So for me to come with a real insightful assessment would be a little bit of a reach. However, just 2 nights ago, I had dinner with my old former general manager, probably the greatest general manager ever, Bill Polian, and we were talking about the same subject, and Bill had very highly complimentary things to say about Doug. So at least I'll relay that to you in answer to your inquiry. Now, did you just tell me that Buddy Nix has stepped down?
Yes, sir. Within the past hour, they just held a press conference saying that General Manager Buddy Nix has stepped down his role as GM and has moved to a special assistance role. And they have yet to name a current general manager, though.
Well, that comes as a bit of a surprise. I knew Buddy fairly well from the time when I was coaching the Bills. He was one of our college scouts and was an excellent scout, and so I don't know what the workings are. There's been a lot of shaking up going in the Bills organization, and I have to say this. There's been maybe too much constant change. I was stunned to read just the other day that I'm the only coach in the history of the organization coached there for more than 5 years, going all the way back to 1960. So, but I don't know what was behind the change. I have high regard for Buddy, and there's been some real changes in the administration. Russ Brandon, a very bright guy, a business type primarily, has taken over running the club full time. Mr. Wilson has turned that over to him, and Russ is a pretty sharp guy, I will say that.
Okay. Now, what are your feelings about the reemergence of the K-Gun offense coming back to Buffalo with Coach Nathaniel Hackett, the offensive coordinator, kind of running the K-Gun offense that you guys ran?
They're going to run now. You're hearing more than I'm hearing. I got to tell you that. You say they're going to go to the K-Gun offense. You have heard rumors to that effect?
Yes, sir. That's what we presumed. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I'm all for it. I've wondered for a long time why teams, and they're just beginning to gravitate in that way now, hadn't run more no-huddle offense. I was stunned, in fact, that teams haven't run more of it, and maybe coaches are too reluctant to turn over so much to the quarterback on the field. But once you run a no-huddle offense, and this is the vital thing about it, your playbook has to be cut down not by 50%, maybe by 75%. Far fewer plays, but you practice and you move quickly so the quarterback can control it. A lot of teams are reluctant to do that. When I was coaching the Bills, I think we had a playbook about maybe 1/4 the size of every other one in the league.
Wow, that's really interesting stuff. That's what this is Del, by the way. Thanks for coming on here with us. That's really interesting stuff. Do you think that the pace is something that scares coaches off? Do you think, as well as the giving up that control to the quarterback and to make those reads at the line and everything? Do you think that the pace is something in terms of conditioning and everything that's difficult for them to manage as well?
Well, no, the pace is what makes it so difficult for the defense, and that's why you have to have a simpler playbook and offensive game plan. The defense can't get their calls in as quickly. The defense is tired. They can't call as many stunts and adjustments and line shifts. You put a lot of pressure on them. Now, what's the downside? Your offense is off the field in a hurry. Honestly, we in every close game we played, the time of possession was about 40% for our opponent, 40 minutes for our opponent, 20 minutes for us, even in games that we won. Now, if we ever got off to a good big lead going late, then we'd come out of the no-huddle and grind the clock and make it work and go to another aspect of it. So, yeah, it's fast-paced, but if you're committed to it and you believe in it, you got to coach what you believe in. It isn't just the system that wins. If you run, throw, block, tackle, catch, kick better than your opponent, it's fundamentals that win. It's preparation that wins. It's dedication. It's players with high character. Character without ability without character will lose.
That's really fascinating stuff. Thanks. I got a question real quick that I'd like to change gears. One thing I'm sure that you're very familiar with. Every January, Bills fans wait with bated breath to find out if Andre Reid is going to make it into the Hall that following August. What do you think his chances are, especially with a lot of the wide receivers who have yet to be inducted and everything along those lines? What do you think Andre's Reid are making the Hall this year?
Well, they've already picked. This year's induction ceremony, they've already got those that are going in August of this year. Andre
correct.
missed by a narrow margin. You're talking about the following class, I'm sure.
Correct.
And
correct.
Andre Reid, for so many reasons, belongs in the Hall of Fame. When he retired, he was the third most prolific receiver in yards of all time. And he did it with a team that had a very balanced offense, that had other great receivers on the team like James Lofton, Don Beebe, that we spread it around. We threw a tremendous amount to our running backs, Thurman Thomas, to our tight ends. The K-gun was named after Keith McKellar, who would come in tight end situation, and Pete Metzelaars. Andre's nickname with his teammates, by the way, was Yak, and it wasn't because he talked a lot. It was for yards after catch. No one ever was better coming across the middle and catch the ball than Andre. No one was ever better at yards after catch, maybe, except for Jerry Rice and James Lofton.
That's really cool.
He belongs. He belongs in the Hall.
That's awesome. I got a chance to actually go to Frank Reich's breakfast a few months ago here in Buffalo. He holds one every year for his foundation that he has set up. And they kept calling Andre Yak, and it took me a couple of minutes to figure out exactly what it was they were referring to as that yards after catch. That's cool that you're able to corroborate that. That's cool. Are there any other Bills you think from your teams in the late '80s and early '90s? Anybody else you think is Hall of Fame worthy that maybe doesn't get brought up enough in conversation?
Well, yes, and I realize that there are so many guys that are qualified for the Hall of Fame, not just with the Buffalo Bills. Guys, our center Kent Hull was as instrumental in making that no huddle work as Jim Kelly was. He had to call that blocking scheme bang like that right after. Remember the starting count and block 300 pounds of dynamite across the line of scrimmage from him. Steve Tasker, without question, was the greatest hardcore special teams player of all times. Block kicks, return kicks, cover kicks, block kick. Everybody will tell you that. Bill Parcells, when he was with the Patriots, once told me, you know what I prepare for the most on your team? Not Kelly, not Bruce Smith, not Thurman Thomas, Steve Tasker. He said because he could just devastate us in the kicking game. The Hall of Fame voters picked the all-time starting football team a few years ago, and on that they named as the hardcore special teams player Steve Tasker, and I think he certainly does belong.
Now, does it come to a surprise to you that if they name him to that team that he hasn't been inducted into the Hall of Fame yet, even though he has been placed onto that team?
Well, to say surprised is difficult, because it's so. There are so many qualified players from every team that are up there, right up there. I believe Steve belongs. I'm not going to criticize the Hall of Fame voters. They study it hard and they weigh a million things. But I think Steve belongs, and I hope that someday it's there. And that's certainly true of Andre. I could say that about many others on our team, the Darryl Tallies and Cornelius Bennett's, and I'm sure other former coaches are saying that about a lot of their players too.
Absolutely, Coach. Now, not only are you a Hall of Fame coach, but you've also have written a few books in your time. Most notably, just recently you had Between the Lines written. You also had 4 other books. Which one was your favorite to write? And then if you want to, go ahead and tell some of our viewers what your new book is all about.
Yeah, well, I was an English and history major in college. I loved to write. I put aside for many years plot lines and potential character studies, and finally have the time to write. But I wrote a novel at the age of 86. It's Between the Lies, Lies, not lines. But
I apologize about that.
No, you got close. I'll tell you. Between the Lies, and the protagonist is a legendary sports writer who finds out that his hometown team's coach, the Los Angeles Leopards, fiction, has orchestrated a massive cheating plan in order to get his team to and to win the Super Bowl game. But there's so many underlying things: coach, owner, general manager relationships. There's love stories. There's looks inside what it's like in the locker room, what it's like on draft day in the draft room. and it goes way beyond just touchdowns and interceptions.
That does definitely sound intriguing. I'm sure fans will be interested to take a look at the book. Now, are there any other plans for future books in the near future?
Believe it or not, I am about 110 pages into a book of, hang on folks, poetry. And I'm targeting close to 200 pages, and I'll send it in on a variety of subjects. Some of it's sports, but it's not primarily sports oriented. It's very diverse. So I know poetry sometimes isn't a bestseller, but it's a lot of fun to write for me.
Coach, this is Del again. I partly responsible. I help run a group of Bills fans on social media called the Bills Mafia. It's kind of like a joke, an inside joke that kind of blew up and has become basically a movement about uniting Bills fans across the world, really, with social media and computers and everything. So I wanted to, just, as I was reading about you leading up into this interview, I saw that you're actually an honorary board member of the Roswell Park Alliance Foundation. We actually, all the stuff we sell, all the events we run, we actually give all the profits to charity, and our primary beneficiary is Roswell Park. I'm just a little bit, I'm interested a little bit in what your interactions have been with Roswell and, you know, some of the things that you've been able to do with them or your history with them at all.
Again, I'm struggling to hear. I got the idea. Well, no, with Roswell, I stay in touch. Roswell Park, I have great regard for them. I myself am a cancer survivor, and it was Roswell Park Cancer Institute that treated me. I've been cancer-free now for more than 15 years, and but they do fantastic work. The staff there, the people that work there have been just wonderful, and so I just stay posted, stay closely in touch with one or two of the people who work for the Cancer Institute.
Good to hear. That's awesome.
Okay. Now, you've heard of the Toronto series that goes on with the Bills that unfortunately takes one game away from Bills fans for a home game? How do you feel about the Toronto series renewing their relationship and having the Bills play up in Toronto at least one time a year?
Yeah. Well, again, this is opinion. I rarely talked the business aspect of the team with Mr. Wilson. I was the football coach, and I didn't meddle in that. It wasn't mine. But this is my my take on that. First of all, Buffalo, the Buffalo Bills are really not just a pinpoint city team. They're an area team. And area means we're just right on the border of Canada. Many of our fans, many of them, come to the Bills games from Canada. I would estimate off the top of my head 20% of the fan base is there from Canada. And as a show of appreciation and to keep them interested, I think the Bills take a game per year and go up there. And I do not think that the Bills will move from Buffalo. That's a think. Again, I'm not in the know. But I think that the fans are too good. Hey, when we had those good teams, we led the league in attendance 6 years in a row. Stadium isn't big enough now to do that again, but nevertheless, it shows how responsive it is. So, but a game a year in Toronto, I think, is appropriate, in my opinion.
And Coach, you mentioned Mr. Wilson in your reply there. Have you had the opportunity to speak to him as of late, and do you know how he's doing? How things are going on with him in Detroit?
Yes, I speak with Mr. Wilson not that often, but maybe the last time might have been 6 weeks ago, and he's still very sharp mentally. Comes across sharp. He just said, I can't move around like I once did. So he's a little bit more reluctant to do the traveling that he used to do, and so on. But in terms of his mental back and forth, he's sharp as ever. Still great sense of humor, and I was blessed to be able to work for and with Ralph Wilson.
Now, Coach, you had mentioned you were in the middle of writing a poetry book. Do you have a date and time that you wish to have it all set and ready to go and published and sent out to fans?
Well, I didn't really target anything, but you should sit down and get going. It's not that quick, and when I get done, I'm going to review and make sure it's right. So I hope to do it probably by the end of the year. That sounds like a long way off, but to be realistic, that would be my target date. To get it out maybe early. I hope I do it in time to get it out for Christmas. Let's put it that way. That would be
That'd be a very good Christmas gift for some Bills fans, I would think.
Yeah, and my publisher would, publishers like it out for Christmas time, too.
Absolutely.
Now, Coach, just to wrap it up, our first question to you was about, Doug Marrone and the directions the Bills are going. Overall, for the upcoming NFL season, what's your outlook? Do you have any predictions you want to share, or any thoughts on what you see going on in the league this year? Maybe not even specifically to the Bills, but overall. I'm not sure how close a tabs you keep on everything. But.
Well, I've always said, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, that predicting the winner is easy. Being right, that's the hard part. So it's a little bit difficult for me. I have to admit, have I studied it to the degree I did when I was actually coaching, or even when I was in the media, did a lot of media work in the several years following it? I haven't, and it's so. I'm not going to give you an off the top of my head. Boy, these guys are good. The teams that have the most stability are the ones that you keep your eye on. That's why New England's done well over the years now. Stability is one of the great factors.
Well, Coach, we'd like to thank you for coming on the show today and taking the time out of your day. We greatly appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure visiting with you, with those great fans there in Buffalo. They are incomparable, wonderful fans. I remember them very fondly.
And what other place would you rather be than right here and right now?
Very true. And that was another book I wrote, of course, and it did pretty darn well.
The following podcast is a part of the Pro Football Central Podcast Network. Check us out at ProFootballCentral.com.
Circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
Okay, guys, where else would you rather be?
It's your hometown team. We out with Ralph Wilson. Tailgating.
I'm cold, yeah, I get my Buffalo Bill on cold. Yeah, I get my Buffalo Bill on cold. Yeah, I get my Buffalo Bill on. Get my chill on, get my chill on cold. Yeah, I get my Buffalo Bill on cold. Yeah, I get my Buffalo Bill on cold. Yeah, I get my Buffalo Bill on. Get my chill on, get my chill on.
Running out the tunnel, Ralph Wilson Stadium. Fitzpatrick, Fred Jackson, Chan Gailey them. You hear the herd, there's no saving them. For the sleepers, we bringing them rude awakenings. Trust me, it'll never be safe again. See the defense, you should be afraid of them. Yeah, you should be afraid of them, cause they like takeaways, ask Tom Brady them.
Yeah, I get my Buffalo Bill on cold. Yeah, I get my Buffalo Bill on cold. Yeah, I get my Buffalo Bill on. Get my chill on, get my chill on cold. Yeah, I get my Buffalo Bill on cold. Yeah, I get my Buffalo Bill on cold. Yeah, I get my Buffalo Bill on. Get my chill on, get my chill on.
It's all